So I'm super stoked to hear your story because I actually became a fan of the show Songland a few months ago. So I was been watching all of the Hulu episodes, and I think I actually saw your episode. So when I saw that you were on there, I was like, oh hell yeah, I get to talk to him about this. And so we'll get to that, but we like to just take it all the way back first. And why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got into music?
Absolutely. So I started singing and playing piano from a young age. My folks said that I was the type of kid that would just like make up songs in the back of the car seat, and they'd be like,
Nice.
there might be a little something there. So like, put me in the church choir and all the school programs and stuff, and just developed such a love of music and performing from there. They also would play a ton of like old school records like Stevie Wonder and Marvin Gaye, and hearing such strong voices tell such incredible stories that could be presented in an up-tempo fun dance way, but also like soulful ballads that just hit you right in the gut. Just, I don't know, it just got me hooked really quickly because those are such great inspirations. So yeah, that's how I got into it. And um, as soon as I graduated from high school, decided to go to college for music and got trained there and spent a lot of time just developing my craft out in Nashville.
So when did you start? Because you're a piano player also, right? Besides just being a singer, so you're listening to Motown at home. Your parents are music enthusiasts. When did you hop on the piano? Was that your first instrument?
So I first started on violin at 3, and then at 4 started doing
Wow.
piano classically. And then once they started putting me into the kind of like church stuff, then they were like, well, you play a bunch of instruments, so sit down and start playing piano. You got to have you do something. So
Right.
yeah, I started playing in church, and that was about 7 or 8 when I started playing piano as well.
Okay. Violin at 3, huh? That's
Yeah,
pretty crazy.
I mean, it was one of those like the instructor gave us these cutout cereal boxes that could function as a violin, and that's how they taught us to identify strings and get to know the whole setup. So I didn't continue playing past like 6 or 7, but it did develop this love of stringed instruments, and that's a huge part of my creative process is bringing in any sort of stringed instrument that's possible to play live. So gave me an understanding and a development of how to arrange for strings for a song, and yeah, so I
Yeah,
love.
I've always loved, ever since like the Beatles like brought in like strings for like Sergeant Pepper and their like kind of more epic albums. I always thought strings were very cool like in pop music, you know what I mean? I mean,
Mm,
of course in R&B and like softer music it works a little more naturally, but like finding ways to make it work in like upbeat pop music I always thought was really fun.
yeah, disco seems to have done it the best. So,
That's right. You're
keep it up.
totally right about that. You're totally right about that. So are you in high school? Are you doing performances and are you doing other things before you start, officially going to school?
Yeah, I was a one sport athlete, so I did show choir, which I consider the most intense sport of all of them. And show choir, like it's a whole culture out in the Midwest where I'm from, where
Mm,
there's like national championships and like it's just you've seen Glee, right?
yeah, yeah.
That's
That's
that
how it is.
high school sport. It was so intense.
Uh-huh.
And like training, like all the stuff. We'd rehearse like 7 hours a week, 7 or 8, and
Wow.
tour on the weekends. So in high school, that was kind of what got me into performing out. But um, I think the intensity of the choral programs that I was in definitely made me look at the structure of music and wonder like how I could create that on my own and kind of learn the structure so I could build off of that and figure it out for myself.
So in high school, were you getting on the piano? Were you starting to tinker around and write like songs and were you playing them for friends maybe or your parents or something or was there any sort of performance besides yourself?
Yeah, so I started writing my freshman year of high school because I just had a lot of feelings and I loved singing other people's stuff, but it was like I think I got enough emotion to figure out how to do this myself. Um, and I would like go to parties and everyone would be hanging out or whatever, and they'd be like, "Oh, David sings, like David play something, blah blah," and I'd
Yeah.
up on the piano and play for my friends and all the cool kids and kind of like
Nice.
make friends that way.
Yeah.
And yeah, so at first it was just kind of like for my social circles or whatever. And I told
Sure.
them when there were talent shows or variety shows and stuff like that, then I'd do an original and get to do the whole like stage setup and whatnot. So yeah, it
So
was
so
more.
so definitely, yeah. And then you decided to go to school for music, right? After high school, you said.
I went to Belmont University.
So was that a pretty easy decision for you at that point? It was like, I'm doing music. Was there were your parents on board with that, or how was that decision made?
Um, it never really seemed like much of a choice, just more of a like, this is what I'm doing and that's it. And what's the best place to do it in? And Nashville is a great city to be thrown into at 17 to learn about how to write songs because people can write a good song out there.
Yeah. So you get there, and do you start finding writing partners like at school, or are you, obviously you're going to school for it, so you're in classes and all that, but do you start, aside from the formal part, do you start finding, like-minded people and start like jumping in kind of like the rehearsal places with them, or writing circles, and start collaborating right away? Or how did that process go?
Yeah, the cool part about Nashville and going to school there is that you're surrounded by people that are in the industry and that are doing it professionally. And within my first 2 weeks, I was playing sessions on piano in some of the bigger studios out there, and it's kind of like word of mouth. You get there, you start doing your thing, and then people say, "Oh, I know a piano guy. I know a guy can sing back up." Like, yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I was pretty much like, I got to school and was doing a bit of both within the professional industry, and then also studying. I did a lot of like backup work as a favor because I wanted to learn, and did a
Sure.
lot of that for Christian and country singers out there, and did some writing as well, and kind of learned on the ground from other people.
So obviously you're a great writer. So tell me a little bit about how you transitioned from kind of this word of mouth that started spreading about you, doing a session here and a session there, to doing some of these big performances with crazy artists like John Legend, and how did that happen? How did that momentum build up?
So after college, I signed a publishing deal and started writing for TV and film and other artists. And after I signed that deal, the company that I was working with was like, "Hey, if you want to do anything artist related and opening stuff, like that's on you. We're just going to handle the licensing side of things. But if you want
Mhm.
to figure out the rest of it, you just got to figure it out." And so I called the people that I'd done favors for and done backup gigs for and writing sessions for free without asking questions, and was like, "Hey, I would love to just drive 12 hours overnight and sing one or two songs before you go on, if that's possible." And just got on the road as soon as college ended. And it started off, playing for 10 people in a bar. And after 3 years of grinding it out on the road and doing 150 shows a year, just built off of that. So it's been a process, but definitely what I've enjoyed.
Yeah, I read that you did, at least at this point, or whenever I had read it, or whenever it was written, I should say, you've performed on 700 plus stages now, and performed at the 64th Primetime Emmy Awards Governor's Ball,
Hmm.
and did a 73 show residency at Quincy Jones Club Q's in Dubai. How was that? Hanging out in Dubai for 73 shows.
Crazy. That was insane. When I started my first album, I had like put Quincy Jones as this, like, what I want to manifest meeting this person and figure out how to make that happen. I don't know anyone that knows him, but he's an icon, a hero of mine.
Yeah.
And just kind of got to work. 6 months later, did my first show off that album, and a friend of a friend of a friend sent his one of his executive teams over, and they saw the show. I didn't know till the next day, and they reached out over Instagram and were like, "We were there, we loved it. We have this residency in Dubai that is Quincy's first club. We'd love for you to perform the residency." So um, within 6 months, I was out there and hopped on a stage and did a 3 hour show every night for about 120 people each night,
Wow.
over the world. And it was it was really one of the coolest experiences because it really fine tuned um, how I perform. We have to get up every night and do it for 2.5, 3 hours, and it was my own show, my original music. You have to figure out on spot like what's landing, what's working, what's not working. Some people
Yeah.
don't speak English, some people don't have never heard this type of music before, so it really gave me a global perspective in how I create and how I perform.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's kind of trial by fire. I've never been to Dubai. I've only, but I've seen like all the images and everything. It seems like a Las Vegas, like in the middle, like in Dubai. Is that what it is that what it is that what it looks like to you? Is that how it felt?
Yeah, it is made to stimulate. That is
Right, right, right.
that is how it is. It's got the world's
Like
biggest,
Vegas. Yeah.
bestest ever. Like, yeah, like Vegas, but also with a really different culture,
Sure. Yeah.
rules and different attitudes and opinions. So I it's easy to feel comfortable, and then you have to remember that you are in a totally different environment. And
Right, right. So despite how touristy it is, it's still there's still kind of some built-in cultural things that you have to remember.
absolutely, yeah.
Well, so you called in some favors after a while, after doing some things for free, and then called in some favors and played at the right shows and had the right people see you. So I'd love to know after that, were you a fan of Songland and were like, hey, I want to try out for this show, or did someone tell you about it, or tell me the story about how you got on Songland?
Yeah. So there are a few companies that kind of do the casting for all of these shows, and
Hmm.
over the past several years, I've been offered a couple of those reality singing shows, and I really wanted to focus on writing. I didn't
Hmm.
really want to focus so much on kind of the cover singing aspect of it, and just developed that. And I had one of the casting people reach out. Hey, this last season went really well. We have another season coming up. If you have any songs that would fit for these artists, here's a way you can submit your song. And yeah, I guess they had about 2,000 submissions this year. And
Wow.
I had just written a song at a writing camp, where as soon as I finished the song, I was like, this would be great for someone like Ben Platt or Sam Smith or
Ah.
one of those types of artists. So when I saw
Hmm.
them on the list of artists that they were having on the show, I was like,
Hmm.
okay, well, let's see if this works. And
Yeah.
sent it in, and 2 months later, it was there singing it for Ben. And
Yeah, that's awesome. So you had the song that you wrote. Did you then say, okay, well, I got to come up with a decently produced version of this song to submit? So did the show come first, and you're like, okay, I got to produce it and then send it to them, or had you already
no.
recorded it?
So whenever I write, I usually write things from as like a piano vocal or guitar vocal and try and get it produced the same day,
Mm,
in the same session, just because you get so many ideas and they can end up all over the place, or you never do it again because you just didn't do the work. So that night that I wrote it at the writing camp, me and the co-producer, we went back to his house and just finished it and stayed up to like 3 or 4 in the morning,
oh wow.
and, and didn't know what it would do. But when we played it for the camp the next day, there was just this feeling in this room that it was a special song, and so we were glad we finished it. And I started asking around, like, anyone who works with Ben, like, or Sam, or whatever. If this is a song I just worked on, check it out. Um, and I wrote that November of last year, and then I submitted it to Songland in middle of December,
Hmm.
and then we filmed in February. So it was a pretty quick process.
And that song, for those who haven't heard it, is "Everything It Took to Get to You," right?
Hmm.
Ben Platt released that under Songland's distribution or whatever, so you can listen to it now. Great song. So prior to that, had you been in rooms with the type of writing and then eventually production that was on the show? Because I mean, I'm sure the show is edited in a certain way to make it look even more simple, but I just love how it appears, at least on the show, that the writers on the show are just coming up with these golden nuggets, like right as they're listening to the song. How was that? Was that a whole other level, or had you been in similar rooms to that?
Yeah, so I had the chance to work with RedOne, who's a pop producer in 2015 and 16,
Hmm.
and spent a lot of time working with him, and kind of got to see the pop formula at work, and how he creates, and that was definitely one of those things that really helped my process in figuring out how I wanted to write and produce at the same time. And had worked with a handful of national producers who were kind of the same way. So when I um, got on the show, we did the first performance of it, and it was about a so they show maybe 2 minutes,
Hmm.
but you're in there for about 30, 40 minutes, and it's
Mm.
it's a really good time because the best part about the three producers that are editing the song, they really, really love music and really, really, really want the best song to get to the best artist. So
Yeah.
we're all just like talking about the song and hanging out and like, going back and forth. And then the other two sessions, we had one session that was filmed and then another session where we spent like 8 or 9 hours in studio like finishing the song because it does take some time.
Yeah.
But with my sessions with Ryan, I had like the best time.
Hmm. It
He's
looks fun. Yeah.
yeah, it was really fun. He's obviously incredible at what he does, but he is so good at like putting himself in the shoes of the artist that he's going for and pitching for
Right.
that. And
Right.
so we didn't change a ton about the song. We just tried to hone the lyric to where it would just be like specific to Ben's experience and from what we
Right.
knew back then. So
Hmm.
that was fun to it was microscopic. It was the way that we had to look at every single word and make sure that it was just right and it went well with him.
Yeah. Yeah. So okay. So the session is, so at least that initial session is a little longer than it appears. It's about half hour, you said. But then the studio session is extra long, which I expected, because they come out with at the end of the show, they got these fully produced tracks. A lot of times it's like any of those tracks could have won. You're thinking to
Hmm.
yourself as you listen to them, which is a testament to how great they are at what they do. But yeah, like you said, I guess previously you had worked with RedOne, and they've worked with Lady Gaga and Nicki Minaj. So obviously it's not like you hadn't been in a similar situation before,
Hmm.
but maybe that helped prepare you for it. So yeah, that was awesome. So tell us a little bit about your album, your debut album, was released in 2018, right?
Hmm.
And so I got to tell you, the what's the name of the big hit off of that album? I love it. It's yes, I love that. I love that disco-y bass you got on there, and it's just so funky and fun. And that's like the exact type of disco music I love. The reason it's done so much is because it's so great. That's Michael Jackson. It's all that.
Hmm.
And actually, I meant to mention Quincy Jones. One of my favorite anecdotes I heard about Quincy Jones, when you mentioned playing at his club, is Thriller, one of the best albums
Hmm.
ever in pop music, if not the best. And Quincy Jones, of course, the producer of that. But I read somewhere recently that he was already middle aged when he produced that album. So I just love that idea that you can be middle, not you're not he wasn't young. He was, I think, 30. I think he might have been in his 40s, maybe, or maybe his 50s, but he produces that album at that time, and it's like it's never too late to make your best work.
Hmm. Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think it's a testament to just how much he loves music to start with Frank Sinatra and still be making music after it was like 60 years.
Yeah.
And not just Frank Sinatra, but before that with big band artists and like Ella Fitzgerald. Like that's a long career and with a lot of ups and downs, and you have to be obsessed. And
Yeah.
the example of being like, it's about the music. That's it. You know?
Right, right. Yeah. Love that about him. So you have dropped a couple singles just very recently. Ocean, you just dropped, and Golden as well. You want to tell us a little bit about those songs?
Sure. So, Corona hit in March, right?
Hmm.
And I had been thinking about a second record, and I had a year of touring that I was supposed to be doing, and then all of that got canceled in
Yeah.
March. And
Hmm.
um, I've always kind of felt like, music and artists our job is to provide relief for people in the ups and downs of life. And we were looking at like the biggest down of life in the
Yeah.
last
Yeah.
100 years.
Right.
And I was like, I gotta get to work because this is what I've promised myself to do is to hopefully provide some relief for people in this time period. So I got on quarantine Zoom with my co-producer, and we just started working and figuring out how to do it all virtually instead of being in the studio with musicians and just like creating off the fly. So it was definitely the first time I've started a song and put out the song without ever like being in person with the production team and being able to vibe. But I'm really glad with what we got. And those songs are both about like assessing the value of the people you love and making that priority. And even if there's distance or hard times, that there is still connection there because you got love. So
Yeah. Yeah, great songs. And yeah, you're a Zoom pro. You got your microphone and everything.
yeah,
You're able to get on really quick at a moment's notice. So obviously a pro. How was that collaborating via Zoom? Are you sitting there? Did you like put your laptop on top of the piano, and then are you just kind of like you testing ideas out and you reading things off, and then like working with a producer who's like maybe like trying to match some beats to it like as you're going, or were you actually directly interfacing with any software where you're kind of like putting things together in real time? Or tell me a little bit about that.
yeah. So we used a mix of FaceTime, Logic Pro, and this app called Listen To, which is audio movers. It like streams HQ audio with no latency. You can play it from your interface, and it like shows up on theirs in real time.
Yeah.
And I'd never heard of it before and found it the first couple weeks or after I think sometime in April. And so what I would do is I would record a piano vocal demo or a guitar vocal demo, and then I would send the stems over to him, and then he would start building either some sort of like basic drum track, and then we get on FaceTime, listen through everything together, and then he'd be like, "Okay, I think I should add this," and I'd say, "Okay, I'll add acoustic piano." So I go to my acoustic piano and record that, and then mail that to or email that to him. He'd drop it in the session. He'd do his thing. If there was an instrument that neither of us could cover, we would call someone and be like, "Hey, could you play saxophone for this and record it in your studio?" And then email it to us, and then just kind of like lined everything up and said, "All right, this is either missing this, so let's fix this, or this sounds pretty good. Let's go with that."
That's awesome. So you playing to a click? You're like you got the BPM,
Yeah,
and so you're
yeah,
like, oh, I play it, so that way you can just drop it in when you send it to him.
yeah. I also like to do a lot of arranging myself, so I'll go through Logic and play everything that I think should be there, and be like, "This piano line needs to be a horn," so I'll send that to the horn player, and he'll just copy that to the click and then send it back, and I'll just replace it with what was there before. It's like a puzzle
Yeah.
when you do it virtually. We're just trying to figure out what's missing as opposed to just vibing in a studio and being like, "This feels right. Let's go with it."
Right. Do you feel like the FaceTime or the Zoom video, do you feel like that adds to the collaboration? Because it sounds like most of what you were just talking about could have been done by phone, technically. Do you feel like the just seeing them and seeing their facial expressions like adds to it, helps?
Yes, for sure. It adds to a bit of the validation if you're doing something right.
Right. Or watching their head bob, or
Yeah,
you
if
could,
they're,
yeah,
if they're feeling it, then you know
yeah,
you're on the right track. But if people start getting distracted or bored, then you're like, maybe this isn't the right idea.
Right, right. Those nonverbals, yeah. Well, that's awesome. Yeah, the that listen to site, or I think it's just a website, right? It's not something you had to download, is it? It's not a
It is.
program.
It's an
Oh, it
app.
is.
So
Okay.
it's a plugin that shows up in your interface or in your DAW, and then you can just add it to any channel.
Ah, okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I used something really similar near the beginning of COVID also with a mixer, and he was sending me some stuff, and he wanted, so we were using that because he was, he was pretty well quarantined.
Mhm.
So that was my first time using that too. But I was like, this is great. Maybe we can use this in the future.
Yeah.
Although I do love the simplicity of just being in the room with somebody and being like, oh, let's just kind of, it's
Mhm.
easier in person still, but it's definitely great for the moment we're in.
Yeah. It's working. We're making it work.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If you love it, you'll make it work, right? Where there's a
Exactly.
will, there's a way.
Exactly.
So you have some singles, but you also just dropped a very a timely, I think well timed, because it'll give people a chance to listen to it before the holidays. But you dropped a Christmas EP.
Yeah. Hope for the holidays.
Yeah. So are those original songs? Are they Christmas songs that you like, or holiday songs that you like? Both.
So there's three tracks on the EP. The first one is Christmas Wishin', which is an original. Second one is called Meet Me at Midnight, which is a New Year's Eve song. I have only
Nice.
heard two or three and was like, well, I might as well write a third New Year's Eve song. So me and my buddy wrote that one, and then there's a cover of Whitney Houston's "Who Would Imagine." That's all a cappella and just like 60 tracks of me singing harmonies, and yeah, so
Awesome.
it's a 3-song EP. Yeah.
That's a good idea. Getting those New Year's Eve tracks in, because yeah, you're right. I
Yeah,
don't you don't hear enough of those.
we need more of them.
Yeah.
It's been fun to put it out this early. I know I'm usually like a no Christmas until after Thanksgiving person, but one of the tracks is going to be on a holiday special on HBO, so I wanted to make sure that that came out in time for people to find it. And
Mm.
also, like, we need some upbeat, good
Yeah,
times.
I know. Yeah, we
This is
need to escape to
back.
the holidays.
Yeah,
I
right.
was about to say it's probably good for syncs, but I guess you already even had a sync, so it made sense to release it now. But maybe a music director will hear it before, if there's time. Maybe they'll hear it before. They got 3 months still, so,
Right.
or 2 months maybe. But New Year's, yeah. Then they got a couple. They got a couple weeks after New Year's.
Right.
Well, that's awesome. We'll be listening to that more and more then as the holidays come. And David, such a pleasure to talk to you, and thanks for jumping on video. Amazing story, man. You made it seem so effortless as far as your life. I don't know, it probably wasn't that easy, but it sounds like you had a pretty clear path since freshman year of high school, huh?
It's just an obsession. There's
Mhm.
been obvious, very hard things, but loving yourself and loving the music, I don't really need much else, and loving my people. That's
Yeah. Yeah.
it's got me going.
Well, with that, I mean, that sounds like you might have partially answered my next question, but we like to end the interviews just by asking, if you had one piece of advice to give to aspiring artists, what would it be?
Um, I would tell them that whatever makes you different is what is going to make you win at the end of the day, and to do whatever it takes to learn to love yourself and lean into your quirks because they're what make you awesome.
Bringing it backwards.